The first thing I would like to do is welcome all of our taxpayers. See a lot of familiar faces. Glad you're here. Appreciate you coming. I would ask Pat to mind what he can do some work there. Okay, please.
Father, we're so grateful for the day that you've given to us, all around us with these reminders of how much you care for us. We thank you that we live in the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Thank you for civil proceedings where we can come together and we can always share our thoughts and concerns. I just pray that we'll be with this meeting, give us insight, give us wisdom beyond what we're able to do on our own. We just thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'd like to give any elected officials that are here, I'd like to just introduce themselves. I see at least one. I'll be back there before.
Derek Weathers, Cleveland City Council. Carrie Keith, Alfred, City Council.
Anybody else?
Same with me.
Come on
I'm
up.
not sworn in yet.
Tim? Tim, stand up. Come on over.
Have made this secretary for next year.
District Attorney elect.
Some of you stand up when you speak. Some of us, the hearing aids don't last that long. Okay.
All right, first item on the agenda is to welcome our new board members, Tina White, Larry Trammell, Mike, myself. This is their first meeting. We have one more voting member who would be his first meeting, and that would be a voting member, Scott Porter. He has some family illness he's attending to, so he's not here. We'll now proceed to the oath of office for the new board members.
Yes. No one stand?
Yes.
Okay, so you will repeat after me. In the name and by the authority
In the name and by the authority
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
I state your name.
I, Larry, myself,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
execute the duties
execute the duties
of the office of
of the office of
Director of Central Appraisal District
Director of Central Appraisal District
of Johnson County,
of Johnson County.
and then place 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Of the state of Texas,
Of the state of Texas.
and will to the best of my ability preserve,
Preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
We're very glad to have you three added to the board, and trust that you'll enjoy it as much as we have. Our next item is our attorney, Bruce Medley, going to be interested in paying attention to this as well.
Thank you. I will try to speak loud for everybody. Everybody can hear me. This is a longer orientation than we did when the 5 board members came on. We did not have a screen, so I was just speaking out of a notebook, but we'll try to go through this as quickly as we can. Some of it's just orientation with regards to generally what the appraisal district does. The appraisal district's primary function is to find, list, and discover all taxable property in Johnson County for the use of tax purposes of the local district. The CAD appraises thousands of parcels per year. It determines taxable situs, that is where the properties can be taxed. It administers property tax exemptions. If you live in a piece of property, for example, and it is your residence homestead, your primary residence, the law requires that you file an exemption application with the appraisal district so that that exemption can go into place. The chief executive of the CAD is the chief appraiser, and it is governed by y'all, the board of directors. Currently, there are 5 members appointed by tax units. Those current members will serve until December of 2024, at which time there will be 5 new members appointed to start in January 1 of 25. The districts will, as they do normally, vote on those and appoint those. 2 will be designated to serve for 1 year, 3 will be designated to serve for 3 years, so that we have staggered terms. As to the 3 members that were elected countywide, they serve until December of 2026. There will be a new election in November 26 to start term January of 27. Those new members will then, the statute says, draw lots to determine who gets a term of 3 years and who gets a term of 1 year. Also, so that there are staggered terms. The county assessor collector, if the county assessor has not given the tax collection duties over the appraisal district, is also starting this month a voting member of the board. So there is a total of 9. We have 6 here, so we have 4. The major board of directors' duties are to establish an appraisal office. That happened back in 1980. To hire a chief appraiser, it says eligible chief appraiser. The state limits who can serve as chief appraiser. They have to, by the next January 1 after they're hired, have acquired have a registered professional appraiser designation with the state, or they have, and when they're hired, if they don't have an RPA, they have to have another designation, appraisal designation with the state. At that first meeting, the board of directors will choose a chair and a secretary. They will, during the year, adopt important policies, which we'll talk about. They adopt a budget, which we will talk about. Board meetings must be held at least once a quarter. This district holds them as often, at least once a month. Sometimes we don't have quorum and we have to skip, but all you have to have is a meeting at least once a quarter. And then you will, in this county, select a TLO, which has been done. Adopt important policies. You determine the goals of the CAD. It is good to have written procedures and policies, so where we can, we need to put those in writing. We have a policy and board manual given by the state. It might also be helpful to have one here. In addition to that, and it helps the public understand what the board does. Now, in terms of the important policies, the most important one is every 2 years, there is a biennial reappraisal plan, which is drafted by the chief appraiser, and it comes to be reviewed by the board, and the board votes on. The state requires the reappraisal plan. It is also going to be posted in Austin with the comptroller's office, and it must provide for all properties within the county to be appraised at least once every 3 years. You must have reasonable access by the public to board meetings. We have to have allowances, if we're made aware in advance, for people who are non-English speakers or who have disabilities. We need to have a policy, which we are working on with regard to complaint procedures. Right now, all complaints will be going through our TLO, the taxpayer liaison officer. There needs to be rules with regard to replacement of ARB members who violate ex parte communications. We'll talk about what those are in a moment. We have to notify, one of the duties is to notify, you don't have to, tax units of vacancy on the board of directors if a vacancy exists. Because once that notice goes out, then they have a certain amount of time to submit nominees, and then the board will choose from those nominees. You may have occasion to hire appraisal firms or other companies. For instance, this appraisal district uses an outside firm for the appraisal of mineral interests because they have that specialty knowledge which is not held here. There is a property value study which is done every other year by the state that determines school funding and also determines whether or not the appraisal district is appraising property in accordance with generally accepted appraisal techniques. If you get something from the state saying that one of the school districts has come out of study, which means that the level of appraisal for that district by the appraisal district, for that school by the appraisal district, is less than 95% of where it should be according to the state, that notice goes to the board, and the board will have to make decisions as to how to keep that from happening again. A school district can fail the property value study in 1 year with no effect. It's called going to grace, but if they fail 2 years in a row, their state funding can be cut. And then in a year in which there isn't a property value study, there will be a methods and practices review by the state to make sure that the appraisal district is doing things the way the state requires that it be done. You will adopt a budget. We are in the process today to talk about the budget. A draft budget has already been sent to the taxing units to review. The chief appraiser will present regular financial reports. You will have to review and approve all contracts and purchases. You have, every 2 years, you must select a depository and have an annual audit performed. Always remember the board of directors and the chief appraiser do have different roles. The appraisal district their function is to appraise the property. That role of appraising property is given by the tax judge and the chief appraiser. So the board of directors does not really have any direct impact on values. The board of directors does not hear protests. So taxpayers who are unhappy about their values, those have to go before the appraisal review board. We talked a little bit about the written reappraisal plan. That has an impact on the appraisal process. The budget has an impact on the appraisal process. Who you choose to work with the appraisal district, the private appraisal firm, and also has an indirect impact. So the board of directors has an indirect impact on appraisals, but not a direct impact. The chief appraiser handles the discovery, listing, review, and appraising of all taxable properties. The Constitution of the state of Texas states that all real and tangible personal property in this state shall be taxed at market value unless exempt by law. And that is what the chief appraiser's job is to do. And to administer the CAD office, to create and maintain the roll, and to report to the board of directors. The chief appraiser then, once they are hired, employs and compensates personnel as provided by the budget. And the chief appraiser may delegate authority to employees. When you go to an ARB hearing, for instance, you will probably not see Mr. Hudspeth in that room. He will have delegated that authority to one of his appraisers to present the side of the appraisal district. In terms of appointment and hiring authority, you've already appointed a taxpayer liaison officer. You can hire an independent auditor. You can hire general legal counsel if you wish. You can hire other appraisal firms, which the appraisal district has done. And you provide advice and consent with the chief appraiser with regard to the Ag Advisory Board, which has 3 people who are residents of this county who are engaged in farming and ranching, who advise the chief appraiser with regard to acceptable uses of ag property for farm or ranch. Conflicts of interest. If you or any family member has an interest in property which is being discussed at the board meeting, then you have to file an affidavit before the vote and then abstain from the vote. Those of you who've been on other public boards, that's pretty standard. You must disclose any conflicts. If you're related within 2 degrees of what we say is consanguinity or affinity by blood or by marriage, to someone who appraises property for money within the district, who represents people before the ARB for money in the district, you cannot be directly related that closely to the chief appraiser, for instance. Any conflicts, those conflicts can make you ineligible. Any other conflicts where a contract is coming before the board and you have a significant interest in that business, you have to abstain from voting. You have to disclose any conflicts as well in writing. Under chapters 176, there's a specific form for that. It's fairly detailed, so I didn't talk about it here. I'm trying to go through this as quickly as I can because we have a lot of people here and I want to make sure that everybody has all the time they need. The qualification requirements for directors in Chapter 6 of the Code apply to all directors, whether appointed or elected. You must be a resident for 2 years. For instance, you can be an officer or member of a governing body of a taxing unit within the county. You cannot be an employee of a taxing unit within the county unless you're also a member of a governing body. If you're both, say for instance, you're on the city council, but you also work at the school, that would be okay, as long as you're on the governing body. You cannot owe delinquent taxes. You cannot be closely related, as I said, to someone in the process, and you cannot have a conflict of interest with regards to what goes on here. Basically, when we're talking about conflicts of interest, you cannot be or have a substantial business relationship with a company that has a contract with the appraisal district, or with any company that has a contract with the taxing unit if that contract involves property taxes. So we try to keep you basically separated from this process. Yes?
Now, conferences with taxing entity, governance or employees, is that allowed?
You have a sheet in front of you. It was an article that I wrote with one of my partners on ex parte communications. We'll talk a little bit about ex parte communications when we get to it. But yes, there is a limit to what you can talk about. But generally, just updating the entities as to what is happening at the appraisal district is not a problem.
So it doesn't matter if the meetings are private or if it's open, you know, in a public place.
You run into problems with open meetings if you're talking to members of the governing body, because they operate under the same rules that y'all do. And what you cannot have a meeting of a majority of the members of a governing body in one place where you discuss public business unless there has been an agenda posted 72 hours in advance of the meeting. And on that agenda, you must state what it is you're talking about. For instance, the agenda for this meeting is up there. It has been posted online. It was posted physically on the district. I mean, I have had, say you have, they have a pickle parade in Mansfield every year. And say the city council wanted to go to the pickle parade. And they were afraid that there might be a quorum of there talking about public business. They would need to post an agenda that there may be public business discussed of this nature at that pickle parade. So you have to be very careful. As we'll talk about with regards to the Open Meetings Act, the board meetings must be held, as I've said, at least once each quarter. Violation of the Open Meetings Act is a criminal offense. Conspiring to avoid the Open Meetings Act is a criminal offense. And we'll talk about how that happens in just a moment. You can only discuss or act on items that are on the agenda, which is one of the reasons why when you have public comment, a lot of times you will voice your concern about a particular item. If it's not on the agenda, all they can really do is acknowledge that the statement has been made. We can't really discuss it because it's not on the agenda.
Okay, one last question. If a question comes up,
Yes.
question comes up, and let's say it's someone asking for information, and the us on the governance board immediately go into
You're talking about an executive session. You cannot go into an executive session unless the executive session is provided for in the agenda. and there are only certain things you can go into executive session for. The three main ones are to talk about personnel matters, to discuss a possible purchase or sale of real estate, or to talk to an attorney about pending or possible litigation.
But
Those are the only things
it
you
doesn't need to be on the agenda.
It will need to be on the agenda, even if it says a general statement that the board executive session to go into session to talk about personnel matters, comma, consultation with attorney, comma, sale or purchase of real estate. But something has to be on the agenda that allows you to go into executive session. If it's not on the agenda, you can't go. Okay? The thing about conspiring to avoid, there's a thing called a walking forum. We'll talk a little bit more about this with regard to social media. It is a problem. You're not supposed to discuss, whether it's an executive session or everywhere else, how you're going to vote with one of your fellow board members. Because basically, if Dwayne tells you how he's going to vote, and you tell Amy how y'all are going to vote, and she tells Mike how you're going to vote, Mike tells Larry, and Larry tells Tina, you basically violated the Open Meetings Act. That's what we call a walking forum. And it can happen anywhere. Does it happen? Is it possible that you could just run into Amy somewhere, like at the grocery store, and talk about something? Yes, you can do that. But don't go talking to everybody else. There are possible civil penalties and possible criminal penalties. With regard to executive sessions, we have there what sorts of things to be talked about in executive session. And by the way, if you want a copy of this, Amy has a copy of it. She can print it out as a PDF and distribute it.
Love one.
It's a good idea. Probably.
Love one. Yeah, all of us, yeah.
Please try to avoid discussing public business with other board members by email or by text. A, you run into a problem with a possible walking forum, and B, you just made your phone a container of public information. So be careful about that. I like the quote that my partner has on here from John Gotti. Don't ever say anything you don't want played back to you someday. That is a good rule of thumb. With regard to social media, again, be very careful knowing that using social media could be used as an opportunity or could be accused of being an opportunity to establish a walking forum. If other members of the governing body get involved in that discussion on the social media. You must take, as a board member, open government training within 90 days of taking oath. Some of you have already done it. The new members, some of you may have done it. Some of you, if you haven't done it, you have 90 days in which to do it. The web page is there. You need to take training in open meetings. You have to take training in public information. And I will tell you, those are not riveting things to watch. We talked about selecting and employing a taxpayer liaison officer. When we talk about ex parte communication, it is to be noted there are severe limitations on what you as a board of director can talk about with a member of the ARB, which is why most of those communications are funneled through the TLO. The TLO talks to you, the TLO talks to the ARB.
What is TLO stand for?
The taxpayer liaison officer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry. You'll notice in this business we tend to use a lot of acronyms.
And in each one I will ask you what it means.
That's okay. Board members are unpaid. Just thought I'd get that out there.
Wait a minute.
Can I get sued for being on the board of directors? Yes, you can get sued for anything. You shouldn't have personal liability as long as you act within the scope of your duties. You don't go off the reservation, as it were. You don't violate somebody's rights, and you don't practice discrimination. You should be just fine. Before we get into this, to all the board members, in terms of ex parte communications, there are 4 statutes that are on your handout. The whole process is set up to insulate the ARB from any pressure from one way or the other as to valuation. So they don't get pressured to lower, they don't get pressured to raise. I used to provide training to the current appraisal district, the current ARB from time to time. And what I would tell them is that if you side with the appraisal district 100% of the time, or you side with the taxpayer 100% of the time, you are not doing your job. Nobody's 100% correct. So in order to keep them insulated, no one can talk to an ARB member about a matter which is about to go into hearing, except during the hearing. That's ex parte means one-sided communication. So they can only talk about things that are going to come in front of them at the hearing. Now, at the time, there was no criminal penalty in the statute because before each hearing, the ARB member must sign an oath saying they haven't spoken to anybody. And if you sign an oath and you lied, we call that perjury. They then criminalized that in 2003 to say that the chief appraiser, CAD staff, members of the board of directors cannot talk to the ARB about a matter that could come up at hearing. Period. Any communication intended to influence ARB members from one position to the next by anybody in connection with the appraisal district is a criminal offense. Now, you may say, I just wanted to talk to them about the weather. That's allowed. You can talk to them about the weather. But if you can talk to them about any sorts of things, as long as it's social conversation. But if you start talking to them about valuation issues, if they feel like they're being pressured, you have a potential criminal action on the ARB members, which is why you have a taxpayer liaison officer. In 2007, they added a section that said that you cannot talk to the chief appraiser about valuation issues except in an open meeting where everybody can hear. So, no private conversations with the chief appraiser's staff about valuation issues. Unless it's your property. Obviously, if it's your property, we're going to allow you to talk to the ARB. And in 2021, they added a section with regards to communications to influence the chief appraiser as to value, saying that any member of a tax governing body, there was some concern that some school districts or city councils or counties would contact the chief appraiser to try and influence them to raise values. Those are a misdemeanor. They cannot do that either. There is one other thing that's not in here. It doesn't happen that often. The ARB goes through a training process that is set by the state. There are classes that they have to take in order to be ARB members. They receive training for that. No one associated with the appraisal district can talk to an ARB member and tell them that the training is wrong. The state doesn't like that. That was happening in some places. The ARB member would go to Austin, get the training, come back, and the chief appraiser or appraiser, I'm not saying it happened here, but I've seen it happen in other places. The chief appraiser would then tell them, you just disregard everything they tell you in Austin. This is the way we do it here. And they pass that statute and say you can't do that anymore. Well, that being said, does anybody have any questions? How long did I take?
Too long.
I'm sorry. Just keep in mind that attorneys used to be paid by the word. But that's it for me.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, next item is the consent agenda. We voted on, as all three items at the same time. Unless we want to pull one of the items off the consent agenda for further discussion. I'd like to make one comment before we proceed with that. The TLO report, Ginger, great report. It looks like you're working hard. We appreciate everything you're doing.
It's picking up.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
No, I'd like to talk about the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't hear you. Okay, go ahead. We'll pull that off, item A.
Right.
Just pull off the consent agenda.
So my question is, first time on this board, there are things in these minutes that I would like to discuss. And maybe a legal question, does having the minutes here put that on the agenda? You know, some of the folks last time asked us to do something. And so I want to know when is the appropriate time that we discuss that? Or do I have to ask for it to be put on the agenda for next time? Right now.
You can't really discuss something that's not on the agenda at the meeting. But if somebody brings something up in public comment that you think should be addressed,
Yeah.
outside of the meeting, if you can ask Dwayne, or Dwayne may actually put it on his notes to put it in the next meeting, but that's the process.
So in other words, I can't talk about what's in these minutes right now. I have to ask if they can put it
You can't talk about the topic.
Yeah.
When we talk about approval of the minutes is, do you see a discrepancy in the minutes between what was said or done at the last meeting and what is on the paper? Okay, that's what we're talking about when you talk about approval of the minutes.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Second. There's a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Second. All right. Well, all those that will vote now, those approving the consent agenda, raise your hand and vote electronically. Those opposed? No opposed. Okay, you guys know how to vote? The electronic?
Your season got to be soft, but. Yeah.
John?
Yeah, there you go. So, you just put back and tell them after the event, so keep doing that. So, well, I did, and so, you saw me do it, it was right, and it just keeps popping back to the same old meeting, one.
Next item on the agenda is to, review and approve the audit for 2023. Any board members have any questions?
One of the questions that I had in the MD&A, are you under participation first?
Yeah, that's the auditors here. I present the audit. Raise your hand.
Representatives.
Okay.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Steve Lacey. I'm an auditor with Hankins, and you said
Steve, make sure you're.
You speak loud, I can't hear you back.
how about that? Okay, is this it? No karaoke, I'm good.
Exactly.
Directors, Chief Appraiser, thank you for the opportunity to be here and present this. What you have in front of you is the annual financial report for the district for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023. I'm going to give highlights, we'll roll through, won't read every page, won't work every page. We get the highlights and read through. Starting with page 1, this is the independent auditor's report. This is our main contribution to this package. Most everything else in this package is information as a result of the district put together by Jim and his staff, the books and the notes. The most important thing on this page, paragraph 2, the first line, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position, and essentially the financial statements. This is what we call an unmodified opinion. We call it kind of a clean audit report. It is the highest level of a good standard of reports. As there were no significant issues, material changes, material disagreement. So it's a highest level of a good audit report, unmodified opinion. Other thing I'd like to note on this report, third set of paragraphs labeled emphasis of a matter. This is just required disclosure that we put in to acknowledge that Jim and his staff implemented this new accounting standard related to what we call SABITAs. They're subscription-based information technology agreements, basically software agreements and things like that. The accounting boards have done a good job in the last couple of years of grabbing those, grabbing leases, and making these financials more useful by getting the full amount owed of those up front. So that's kind of what this rolls to. You'll see a little detail of that later. That's the audit report. At this point, I always like to comment, the audit was a good audit. Jim and his staff, as always, knowledgeable, competent, collegial at the appropriate level, provided everything we asked, answered every question we had, engaged in every discussion we needed. And so just great work, so we appreciate that. Makes our process go better. Pages 5 through 10 are really the management, not ours. They are the discussion and analysis of the financial statements in the footnotes. Good information, good analysis in there, numbers and comparisons, but I'll kind of leave that there for now. Jumping ahead to page 12. In these financials, as with almost all governmental type units, entities, you have two types of financials. You have what we call district-wide financials, and that is the operations of the entity along with top-level accounting and entries that are made for fixed assets, depreciation, and liabilities that aren't really a direct result of operations. So the first two financial statements we're going to look at is the all-encompassing, everything in the entity included. This is the statement of net position. On a business set of financials, this would be typically your balance sheet. You've got your assets, liabilities, and your net position. First line is your cash balance. It's a cash balance healthy of $3.464 million. And two things to note, if you were to net the right numbers together, the increase in cash for the 2023 year compared to 2022 was approximately $200,000. So good addition to cash. Other thing to note
People like to talk about kind of the gold standard of cash availability to have enough to cover 3 months of your operating expenses. And this balance for the district would cover approximately 8 months of your operating expenses, so a good amount of cash there. The next big section is deferred outflow of resources, down below the deferred inflow of resources, and then also the net pension liability line. All of those combine together to summarize the activity of the defined benefit pension plan for the employees. When you look through the footnotes, if you have, there's 11 pages dedicated to the pension plan, how it's done, all the assumptions, lots of minutia. The summary for here that's important, when you net those three numbers together, the pension plan is still an asset. The net is still an asset for the district. Worth noting, there is no control over this by the district, anybody employed or involved. It is all part of this pension plan and by the state agency, TCDRS, I believe, and living on the retirement system for counties and districts. Last on the page, worth noting, the total net position of $3.6 million. That had an increase of 6% from last year. You'll see on the next page the details of that. So again, a healthy number with an increase added this year. Going on to page 13, that is the statement of activities for the district-wide financials. And this is essentially what you call the P&L, revenue and expenses. Expenses, total expenses for the district, $4.47 million. Total assessment revenue, $4.607. Off to the far right, coming down that column, you'll see total general revenues of $86,000. That's interest income and things like that. The overall outcome for the year is a positive change in net assets of $223,000, which brings to the number we saw on the first page, the final net position of the year of $3.6 million. At this point, we'll jump to page 14. This is the financial statements for the governmental funds. For the district, they only have one fund in here, the general fund. So this is the activity of the general fund and the operations of the district. The cash here, this is the balance sheet. The cash here is exactly the cash that's on the district-wide. Liabilities, the one line worth noting, unearned revenue in there for $626,000. That's a number that is a result of each year in December, Q1 of the next year's bill for the assessments to the entities, and some will pay that. It's due January 1st, it's billed in December, some will pay it in December. So that money is essentially money that's on the 23 books, but it's really paid for. So that's the unearned definition of that revenue. Fund balance. There's 5 types of fund balance. The first one here is non-spendable. It's what I would call accounting. It really is. It's non-spendable money. It's a small item here for the district. It's prepaid expenses, $5,000. There's 2 types of fund balances the district doesn't have. One is restricted, and that would be an external restriction, a legal restriction from provisions of law, things like that, attached to revenue or resources income. District does not have any of those. The district does not have any committed funds, and that's funds that you, the board of directors, would designate specifically set aside. The next category, which the district does have, is a lot of assigned funds. Assigned funds are very similar to committed. They can be assigned, set aside by the board of directors. They can also be set aside by a delegate, labeled by the board of directors like an employee. You as a district have adopted the policy, only the board of directors can assign funds. So there you have a listing of the balances of the fund that's set aside. You see 2 months operating capital, things like building purchase, building repairs, elections, so many things there. That's all part of the fund balance of the entity, the district, that is assigned for these things as designated by you, the board of directors. Last number there is the unassigned fund balance, $135,000. All of those total to $2,599,000 of fund balance for the general fund. Again, worth highlighting for liquidity in your general fund, which is really your operations, you got over 6 months coverage of your operating expenses. in your general fund or fund balance there.
And you said that's unusually good?
It's a good number. It's a good number. People like to talk about the gold standard being covered in 3 months. And so having 6 is a good number to have there.
Okay. May I ask, does that penalize anyone to have a larger balance?
No. It's reflective of good management, budgeting, adhering to budgets.
Okay.
If it was massively large, yes, you would want to be looking at it going, what are we going to do with it? This is a good number to have there. Going ahead to page 16, this is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and change in fund balance for the governmental funds. Again, for the district, it is the general fund, the only fund you have. Total revenues are $4.693 million. Total expenditures are $4,695, resulting in a small excess of expenditures over revenues, which represents a balanced budget. And then here's where you start to see that implementation of the new accounting standard pop up. You see that other resources, Sabita proceeds. That's a positive, essentially like an asset that has been put on the government books with a matching liability. If you put it in the fund books, we have to put it down here in this line, and it also is an increase of the expenses. So we'll cover that here in a minute when we look at the budget actual variance. We'll kind of talk about the impact of that, showing how the entity district acted within their budget, that this number kind of kicks it out of that.
What is Sabita?
Subscription-based information technology enterprise. There's a footnote when we get back there. There's a footnote number 9. Back in the footnotes, that's a whole page of pretty detailed information on that. And that's a new accounting standard that was implemented this year, as required by the accounting rules. That really covers the financial statements. Starting on page 18, you have footnotes that go to the financials. A lot of important information, a lot of contextual information about the reporting entity, basis of presentation, how things are measured, how they're reported. And then note 2 talks about fund balance. I kind of went through that. It describes the 5 types of fund balance. It details what the district has there. Note 3, what's worth noting at the bottom of page 22 is the sentence, the last sentence, the district's cash deposits at the end of the year and during the year were entirely covered by FDIC insurance and pledged collateral at the bank. The summary there is all funds were covered all year, the insurance or pledged collateral. Note 4, detail of capital assets, fixed assets, shows the beginning, the additions, retirements, and the ending balance. 5 covers the vacation benefits. 6 starts the footnote on the pension, and that's 11 pages long, going all the way to 32, 34, 35. And that's, again, I'll be honest, a lot of minutia. It talks about the basis, the assumptions, the approach of the investment activity, the investment results, the actuarial calculations, everything done by it's the Texas County and District Retirement System that handles that. Note 8 is a detail of leases, and this is implementation of that standard last year that the district appropriately put in place. Note 9 covers the Sabitas and talks about them this year. It shows the assets that were put on the books, the liability amount that was recorded, and then the payout stream of these agreements at the end. 10, 11, 12, 13, just some informational footnotes there. Last page I'll cover is page 40. This is the budget comparison, budget to actual variance. Coming down from the top, revenue, of course, matches. You know your revenue when you go into the year, so your budget revenue matches perfectly. Other revenue was up a couple thousand. Interest income was the big big positive variance. It was 78,000, of course, related to the continuing increase in interest rates. And Jim and his staff do the good job of getting the interest they can on money while they're keeping its operations, but utilizing the tools available to get interest earnings. The expenditures, this is where I want to highlight the way the accounting standards have us put this is, the expenditure line looks like it's 82,000 over budget. What you have to do is, the other resources down there, the Sabita proceeds line, that 141, again, is a positive, it's like an incoming resource. To put that there, we had to increase expenses 141,000. So when you take that out of the true operating expenses for the year, they were 60,000 under budget for the expense lines. That's the takeaway there. That covers my presentation and kind of highlights of it. I am open for questions. I'll answer them if I have the answer and the knowledge here. If not, I'll take it with me and get it.
Directors have questions?
My questions are on the MD&A, the section that I presume Jim wrote and not you as the auditor.
I have one question, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Regarding risk management. This is a question for you and for Jim and staff. I assume the checks require two signatures to a check. Who's authorized? You two? Anybody else? Who generates the checks?
Separate parties, not authorized.
We have
Another staff member.
another staff member writes the checks.
Okay.
We approve them.
All right.
You sign.
And that's part of what we call internal controls that we check.
Yeah.
We look for
When you're
that.
small, it's more difficult, but that's the way.
Yeah, well, I think that's broken. Any other questions?
If they answer the questions I have.
Thank you, officer.
I do have a question, for the fiduciary net position. Who has control over where the money is invested in the retirement fund?
That's pretty defined with the paperwork, the setup of the retirement plan. It's no different than an entity where you've got a 401k or 403b. It is a defined plan that has set
Yeah.
requirements and has,
CPRS Board of Trustees.
yeah, that's the,
And this answers the question regarding that budget line item, for 14%
Right.
that's going into retirement. That's pretty much governed by this DCPRS Board of
Yes.
Trustees.
Yeah, they'll do the actuarial.
So this audit answered that question that we had last month.
Yeah. And so highlight that.
We can select that or not.
Well, once you're entering.
you can look at the amounts. There's a range of amounts that can be percentages.
To get out of there.
And then like Tina said, they determine your contribution based on all their calculations, on those parameters that have been set.
From your knowledge of this report, is discounting normal? It's normal rate?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good.
We see it across all of our governmental units, whether it's appraisal districts, cities, counties, and also school districts. This is very consistent.
Great.
It's pretty prescribed, dictated. It's my opinion, in my
Any other questions, comments?
I have some questions. And I don't know who is the person who should answer this. On page 8, so it is within the MD&A. The two columns in 22 and 23, the net pension asset. So in 22, it was a little over $9, and it's 0 in 23. That's pretty.
I can chime in on that.
Okay.
This goes back to, if you look forward to page 12, is the best way I can describe it. The deferred outflows, the deferred inflows, and then you see right there above total liabilities, there's a net pension liability of $582,000.
Right.
Last year, it was a net pension asset of $1 million. This goes to my comment of, this is nothing anybody here has control over. It is the results of investment activity, investment results, actuarial computations, and so market movement.
So how does that number lead? Did the pension fund miss its projections on what its earnings would be?
I'll give a little more context. The net pension liability is kind of the number it is. These deferred inflows and outflows are what they call a smoothing activity. Because markets and actuarial, they take a 5-year smoothing and come up with all this, go through the machine, run all the buttons, comes out and says, here's where you're at. And so this year, that was my comment. If you add the 850,000 as a positive of the outflows, you take out 110 of the inflows, you take out 582 of the liability, you're still at a positive number for the pension.
On page 10, this is minor, but there's an extra digit in the first bullet where it talks about the increase of 407,000 to 44443.
Typo.
If we're gonna talk about typos.
There's always got to be something.
But, yeah, I know, like the report, on page 5, it says that the district's net capital assets increased by 1.22%. That means slightly over 1%. Well, it increased by 100%.
Well, I've got a sad chagrin on my face because these were caught.
They weren't.
Yeah, but apparently not checked to make sure they read it.
We got the right
I-
one.
Uh-huh.
On the second bullet on page 10, Jim, it talks about funding 5% cost of living merit pay increases. Is that referring to last year's budget? So last year there was a 5% increase. And then the last piece of this is just the last bullet says the district currently serves 26 entities. It's the goal of the district to provide excellent service to all entities served. I think that should also say that it serves the taxpayers, the people who are paying taxes, not just the entities that this money is given to. So for future, I'd like to see that in the future at DNA, but there's an emphasis on people sitting there.
Good point.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have one final question. Do we have a policy on what our reserves should be? We have reserves that are over 60%. So those reserves, we end the year with $2.6 million, which represents a certain percentage of the total operating budget, because the proposed operating budget is going to be, 5.5 or 5.6 million. Is there a policy recommendation that's out there in the financial world, or does this district have a policy about what that should be? Do we understand for research, right?
We decide.
Because that is money that could go, from what I read, it could be distributed back to the taxing entities, if I read that correctly. Meaning, there'd be a lower assessment going forward. So, or is that something for a future discussion, that there should be a policy about how much we actually have in our reserves?
I bet there's not a standard. That was our first question. There's not a standard. I would guess the answer is that we would order things.
But I think you have pretty, I won't say no risk, because I know there's
It's low risk.
stuff I don't know yet, litigation and all
It's
sorts
low
of
risk.
things that I don't know about. But it might be something that would be.
Steve, would you say in your experience there's a norm that we should look to?
It goes all over, and you refer to some things. There's always things going on that you have to know what to do. I didn't do the part of our audit that looks at legal risks, but I know when I was sitting in Jim's at my places and others, there's a lot of information sometimes you keep within that circle. And so, to your point, you don't want it dictated because you want it for your county, for your entity, for your taxpayers, and everything involved. And yes, it is something you would want to discuss internally. For the place, Jim, I don't know if it's a set policy. on reserves. So I want to make sure you have a chance to answer that.
So that's
Some
something
questions to look at. Absolutely.
Because if we can get money back, and we help lower their taxes. That's good.
Do you have a policy, Jim, or do you have a practice you follow?
When we had money left over from budget years, the board was set aside because if anyone's been to our building, we're trying to save up some money for reserves to get the building without asking the entities to fund the money. The appraisal districts, Bruce can correct me, but if we don't have enough money, like if the election came up and we didn't have the money, we would have to go back to the entities and say, we got a $450,000 election coming up. By percentage of their levies, they would have to fund us. I mean, they could refuse, but then there wouldn't be an election. But what I'm saying is, we have to go back and ask them, when we get ready to build the building, I can have all the money sitting here going, it won't cost you. But if 75%, I think, does not approve that, I can't build the building.
So that's part of the discussion.
Yes.
That's a very.
It is. Yes.
It's like air conditioning and stuff, put in a reserve bag. Now, like I say, the election, we put some money back that would come into the building. So there's money here that if y'all decide we need to take some of that off, you correct me, Steve, we could use that and lower the entity's portion. Percentage. Those are discussions that you have to repeat. But that's why they used to call them restricted funds. And then years ago, they went assigned funds.
Yeah, county standards change.
Right, and that's where they'll put, sorry to jump in, Jim, right?
But I don't do that. I bring it to you and ask you, and I put some in here because we used to have 3 months operating. And my auditor told us 2 months is good enough. So we carry 2, but the other is for building repairs, telephone bills. Some of it, if we don't know what's going to happen, we don't want to go back and ask the district for money.
Or even if we do know what's going to happen. If we know, maybe, that we're going to have to do something with that building. Well, you have to know the current somewhere. And maybe that's where. So I would have to ask the taxing increase for more, and they raise your taxes.
And we don't want to, we've always been concerned about, well, let's go spend $8 million on a building. If you need 20,000 square feet, it's $200 a square foot. Well, I don't want to go back to the entities or the schools of the city or the board has never wanted to. I don't either, because I don't want to, you don't want to put more burden on them than they got. If they're hurting, they're not going to want to help us, do it. But that's a discussion we can have, because some of this you may say, well, the election comes 2026. There'll be a cost because we have to pay our portion. Hopefully it won't be $350. You say, hey, I want you to take that out of there, and we'll put it where we want it. It's up to y'all. We're not paying for it.
The thing he was talking about is, during the last election cycle, we already ran for the election for the board. It's a brand new law. And so there was $350,000 set aside. It's not like set aside for run the election. And it cost a lot. And fortunately, everybody was afraid to run against us. So nobody else ran. We didn't have to have an election. And so we saved that money.
Okay.
God bless me.
Harris County, for example, then we can shut this off. Harris County, for example, had an election. Travis did, City also did, and then they had a runoff for one person or two. And they said they spent somewhere between $4 million, $14 million. So pretty big.
And that's what I'd like to comment on the page 14 financial. That's just a good detail of what you, the board, has said. Great disclosure, great transparency. That shows the work ethic in this out. Yes.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I would like to, at some point, have, brief class on the history and where we're at right now. Just bring us all up to speed on the budgets, of the past and what and we'd have to be long, but it would be very illuminating to see the past.
How many years?
5. Does anybody else have an interest in that at all? Or am I just being, yeah, 21?
Just a number. You got.
Back to 2021.
Okay. One more granular detail with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's that too.
Yeah. So it's earnings negotiation. Okay, fine.
All right, anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the audit.
I move to approve the 2023 audit reports.
Second.
A motion second, all in favor? Those opposed, all that's unanimous. Please vote electronically. Good. Next item is to, thank you, Steve.
I appreciate it. I really do. Nice.
Next item is a public hearing on the CAD budget for 2025.
I have a question. Is this a public record or is this, keep it in the board on
There's copies.
public record?
Yeah, okay.
That's what
And there are copies on the table back there. Everybody wants a copy of this budget, summary level copy on the table back.
Yes, please do. Look on it.
Anybody want a copy of the budget?
Yeah, we did.
And then you'll.
Yeah, that's what
All right, we're open to the public hearing on the CAD budget for 2025 at 7:10 p.m. Is that the sound or?
No.
Is there a presentation or there's an invitation for public comment?
I signed up to talk about budget.
Okay.
Just so you know, I turned it in.
I have a question on the budget. What are we ready for a question, Jeff?
You don't want to do a presentation.
Do a presentation before the budget.
I'd like to present.
Yeah.
So should or ask questions, or the public ask their questions, or?
There you go, that.
You want to do it by September, or you want to do, Yeah, there's a Oh, what?
We just talked about it. Ask questions.
The first question I had on the budget was, I noticed a proposal to add a full-time employee, and I was just wondering what that was based on. What position are we adding to the budget? I presume it's for a full-time employee. Okay, customer service clerk.
Yeah, that's.
What's that based on?
That is, in my department, and, I currently, I have a couple of, different areas, and so we've got our customer service, employees, and we have 2 people at the counter, 3 people who answer phones, and I've got 1 person who answers all emails, and then someone who scans records. And when it's our busy season, all my other staff who do deed records and create new accounts, and our GIS department that maps everything in, that just kind of gets put on hold, and we're all answering the phone, which is completely fine, is what we do. But if anyone is ever out, it's almost impossible, and we just hate for people to call in and be waiting on the line for 5-10 minutes to get to talk to somebody. And so it really is to create a floater position that can go from counter to phone to emails and help back up whenever or wherever we need.
I'll bet that you cross-train your existing employees to do that.
Yes.
Which is best practices.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that we're hiring a full-time person, albeit at a low level. Is your need for a season, or is your need really for the full year?
The need would be helpful to have them for the whole year. My only concern is in the past, we have hired seasonal employees, and the amount of training and knowledge that they require to actually help someone and not get them confused. It's just important that someone be trained fully. And honestly, it takes at least a year for someone to get a full training to be able to see a full tax year.
And there's another bill that you will see on the budget, maybe hard to see up there, 5,002 and 5,003 up there, salary, part-time, overtime wages. We moved the part-time to overtime wages if we have to ask an employee to work overtime, because the part-time, what she said, trying to train them just for 3 months, and then they walk out the door, you're training them more than it'll take us to hire. Just paying. So that happens in every department, because we use them there, we use part-time appraisal sometimes, the clerk, appraisal clerks, but by the time they have renditions and all the stuff they need to know, sometimes that would be nice to make sure they make it better. But we just thought it was smarter to, and we try not to work overtime. There's seasons where we have to.
Yeah. My big thing is reference to need. So, did your other phone attend you minutes on hold?
We try, I mean, we've got it where it says,
So,
go here, got this, she does most of the fun stuff. We want a human being to talk to you. We try not to put you on hold if you say hold. We try to close and say, you know,
How many minutes people have to go?
on average,
Centers, we all get.
yes,
Yeah, because that would affect your asking for a person who thinks it'd be crazy.
Depending on the season, right now, we're at about 15 seconds. So it's not bad at all. During our busy season, it can be anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes or higher.
Is there a log that we can look at some point? Yeah, because it's what I'd like to do. There's,
What would you like to have on that one?
minutes on hold. How long does taxpayers have to wait to talk to you?
For the past month, 2 months.
We'll give you
Just during
the, all
the,
season and then notice.
well, just, during your crunch period. That's what I'm most interested in, is because then, that is concrete proof that you're understaffed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or everybody runs out and plays poker for 4 hours. That's, I don't believe that at all. I think it's absolutely, gonna be referential. And total justification. I have had a lot of experience with part-time labor. And if it's more than moving an item from A to B, it's pretty tough to use, part-time labor.
That's why they're going to overtime.
Yeah, that's,
Amy, how many, these customer service people do you have that answer the phone?
I had 3.
Three.
3.
The growth of the county, how many did you have last year, the year before?
3.
So as the county has grown dramatically, you haven't added to that staff since that growth kicked in several years ago.
and it's true that if people have to wait, then they'll do somebody else. I mean, you all have to pay your taxes. And to be put on hold for, I know one county, I lived in it, where you could be put on hold for an hour, and then somebody brings up. So, yeah, that's an insult to injury. So that's why I'm interested in it, because, yeah, happy taxpayers are a good thing.
I do have a couple questions, just for clarification on, code 5014. You guys carry a, year-to-date. My curiosity is just looking at the increase in salaries, your 4% increase, because you're keeping the Medicare tax the same. I was just curious, should that not be adjusted to reflect the increase in salaries? That was one question.
The financial report, we'll have it here today on it.
Okay.
It was in the consent agenda.
Okay. And sorry about that.
Mike, if you look at the 2023 actual and 24 budget, you see the increase.
Or 6 months a year.
That's just half the year.
Okay, so the next one, I guess, would be the 58.5 maintenance agreement. That jumped $100,000. Just out of curiosity, what type of maintenance agreement?
Okay. We increased that because our website is a big part of that. To do that, we don't have the capability, plus we can't check all over because we don't have the time. Or you run a bill where this company checks it from all over. They can check the voter registration, death certificates, everywhere in California. We'll know if you have a homestead anywhere.
So it's not like building maintenance,
No, it's a maintenance, it's what they charge us each year to run this class. It's a software.
You know, we talked about this in the last one.
Yeah, we did.
And the big deal about it is, they're charging us quite a bit of money.
Yeah, they are.
To get this. However, we're gonna catch a lot of duplicates out there. And they have given us the confidence to believe that
Bruce can attest to this, they've cracked down on that. You see it in elections and stuff, people want, you got homestead over here, you got homestead over here. And we can't keep up with all of them, with two people. And they also will check the new homesteads that people will buy a new house and they live somewhere else out of the county and come down here and they don't take their homestead off of homes or, let's say, the rent house. They catch that and they give us flags and we tell which ones to look at. But we're audited, we have to verify every 5 years. And the maps review will check that to see if we're doing it.
It's unfortunate we have to have software to do this, because we do have to have.
Yes, but that's a major in that line increase.
That you will check to make sure you have a plan to do it, and they'll check to make
Yeah,
sure you follow.
to make sure we're good.
Got a question on 5004, similar to what Mike Miguel was asked, was it perfect disposable pretty much covered. The largest value, and the second largest value of pay is professional services, 5,000. Please tell us what that covers.
That is, the biggest asset in that is capital capital appraisal group does our minerals appraisal, they do our industrial appraisals, and they do our utilities. Because we don't have the expertise to do those. And they do about $2.7 billion for appraisals of that, the values that they have. Minerals go up and down every year, but if we had to do the division orders and all that, we're not capable. But that's the biggest asset that they do of that.
Hey, I want to point out the handout that you have on the budget is actually $65,000 less than what we sent to entities, and we worked on it since then.
Yes, we are good. From the very first one that we sent out, we dropped it to the entities. We dropped it $45,100. We went back over it and we dropped it another 65. So we dropped $110,000 off of it so far.
That's great. And you're 110,000 less than the one I got.
Yes.
I wish that, you should have quoted about that earlier.
And the other thing that somebody's gonna ask the question about probably is line, DD 72.
Find out about that.
We,
You know, Amy's looking at you.
Well, I opened with one to ask a question.
Yeah, you did.
That is my indication. But it's not that.
Okay. We have tried to get an appointment with the bank right now, to talk to a gentleman in the last couple of weeks. We're waiting to get back with him, and as soon as we know, when we get to that meeting, we're gonna find out about all the report to the board.
So what I would like to ask is, could the gentleman you're going to meet with, or some representative of the bank, could
ask
they
them.
come to our meeting
I could ask them to do
so
that.
that they can help us understand what that amount is in the budget? So that's one question.
But I want to let you know we're looking at that.
Yes, yes, and we did,
Take
we
care of
talked about it, and it's still confusing, and not making sense, because why we're charging that. And I'm not getting the interest rate that they
Especially when they start taking out what we look at that day. It's like, it's there, but then they take it here.
So my question was just kind of general. When you look at 21 to 22, you actually held your budget steady, and you had a slight increase from 21 to 22. But ever since then, you've had 10% or more increases. When are we going to bring that in? Do you foresee that we're going to get back to, not having 12% increases each year?
It's not. And that's why I just suggested, if we need to use some of that money, as long as it's not, if we use that money to buy down, some of it, it's just gotta make sure that I wanna make sure that that's not something that's gonna be ongoing, like, we could pay off the maintenance, okay? For, let's say, 3 years, but if we do it, certain things, and then it comes up, so I think we will look harder and harder, because most of it is, everybody's gonna know salaries, retirement insurance, capital's gonna be there, we're not gonna change that. The maintenance, because the state's gonna require more and more. The election, I don't believe the election's gonna cost $350,000. But we can get with the voter registration person and find out about that. The building is not going to, any taxpayer that's been in our building. When you go to ARP, you got a room there, the next room you go around, and it's in our little walls. And we did put an air conditioner in it this year. So, it's not as hot in there, but it's, we don't have enough room. You asked a question about why we don't have more people. I don't have a place to put them. You know, our board meetings were down there. Well, there was not enough room. We had a board meeting there tonight.
Yeah, still out on the sidewalk, yeah.
Yes.
So
So we will be raising it, and y'all gonna make sure it's what we have.
Right, and, you know, speaking on salaries, I think last year was at 4 or 5%, and this year it's gonna be 4%, so if you put those figures together, you're pushing up to 10% on the increases, and, I just think we need to be careful and understand, you know, we are going to want to see raises and try to keep up with inflation, but, maybe we should consider not getting too far ahead of inflation in a time like this.
And that's something that is up and down. I won't say us being the bad guy, but one thing about our budget is that we have to do it yearly. We don't know what's going to happen when it is, so we need that. So, you know, that's something that, you know, we cut maybe 10,000 off. If y'all see something that, we could use some of our money to take some of the pressure off the entities, if that's perfect, we can do that, but,
Well, treasury management fees,
if we can get the treasury management fee off, it's under 60,000.
well, I recently ran into a bank executive that's social function, that, our bank is First Financial, right?
Yes.
He's not the First Financial. And we had a very brief chat about the treasury management fee. And he said that based on what I told him, that if his bank was involved, they would charge no treasury management fee at all.
That's what.
But he qualified to say, well, I need to see the details, right? I think what I would like to see is us ask local banks, basically, get bit in business.
Yes.
First Financial, and Grandview, and Pinnacle, and
Yeah, the law's written to everyone that you can go out for bids over 2 years. Okay? If the bank is good, and you like it, you can go 2 more years. But this year, we can go out for bid, we would.
I think that would be appropriate.
Give me great. Let's do
That's the biggest bargaining tool when you ask them about the fee, if they have a response that's not satisfactory.
But we can go out for, bids on it.
I think your message to the bankers should be, we'd like to have them talk about the treasury management fee at a board meeting, and understand that the board is inclined to put this thing out for bid with other banks. They're gonna have to compete for our business in the future. My personal feeling is that if the bids come in, no treasury management fee, and their bid comes in, no treasury management fee, I would feel like we've been taken advantage of, I probably would change things.
Same way I am. But we can do that, so that's an option, sure. It's hard luck.
All right, any more questions or comments from the board? We have a speaker, public, Greg Cooper with Texas Transparency Project.
Good evening, board. Thank you for doing this. And you guys are kind of inadvertently addressing some of my concerns. Normally, the elected officials, they do budget workshops well before they're actually putting on the agenda to approve a budget. And a lot of this stuff that you're talking about can get settled in that because it sends the entity back to do this. There's a lot of questions with some of this budget that if you approve this budget today, I hope you guys will table it and not approve it today, that really need to be looked into. And I'm going to bring up something that's a little uncomfortable. Mr. Hudspeth, this is not directed at you, but before you individuals were elected, Mr. Ford's not here, so I'll exclude him because he's part of the problem here. You guys were not given the opportunity to assess a lot of the staff before mechanisms were put in place with massive salary increases, extensions of contracts for extended periods of time, and a lot of roadblocks put into place. And I would love to see if anything can be done about that to let you guys assess that performance, and also to look at if any other employees or any other departments within the Central Appraisal District, any type of stuff like that was put into place to prevent you guys from doing your job appropriately. You guys were all brought here. Everybody knows why you're here. I go to meetings all over Johnson County and other counties. You will never, ever, ever see a turnout like this. This is a problem and everybody's paying attention, and you guys were all put into place and a lot of effort was done to look at this stuff. And like I said, Mr. Husband, this isn't against you, but the outgoing people should be ashamed of themselves of what they did by handcuffing you guys for you guys to do your job. So I really hope that you guys table this budget and look at some of this stuff a little closer, because it's really hard to come into this and ask a lot of questions and then be asked to approve this budget. So hopefully you guys will consider that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Does anyone else want to speak?
I have a question on the item down
You
here.
want to podium, please?
Oh, Lord, I'm glad. Okay, here we go. My question is on these maintenance agreements that you've gone up quite a bit, that you're speaking of, that has to be done every 5 years on Homestead. Are you getting bids on that, or are you just going with the first person that gives you, tells you they did the job?
We went out.
I mean, we've gone up $100,000 on that budget, so I'm just asking.
But on our website and all, we had our company, we looked at other companies.
Did you get bids? Because I hear like on the bank, you're not really on top of that. And we're letting that go on every 2 years without you renegotiating that part.
No, we've sent out bids before. And the other banks didn't go out all the paperwork on the bids at that time.
So did you get another bid on this, or did you just pick one?
There's a couple of companies that we looked at, and this was one that was good for us.
Did we go with value, or did we go?
We go with value of what they can do for us.
Would we be able to see what those bids were as public? To know that you made the best opinion on our behalf?
I'll get all the paperwork.
I would like to have that, thank you.
I'm a serious shopper. I just got a professional CNC machine for 10 cents on the dollar. And the guy threw me at work. And so he bids.
3 bids.
I'm not saying that some bids, I think would be very appropriate and it should be set up as a policy.
Anybody else want to speak?
Hartswell. I'm gonna represent perhaps an unpopular opinion. This is public comment, not public debate. And so in the rules under the Government Act, this back and forth is not really allowed. So just please keep that in mind. Second, appreciate all you guys learning on the job. But honestly, you can move this along a lot faster and we can get to the same place. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Are we still in the public hearing?
Not. We'll close the public hearing. Board, have any more questions, comments on the budget?
One public hearing, but you don't have to adopt the budget until September.
Does it have to be adopted at a public hearing, or if we have
At a public meeting, yes,
at a public meeting, I understand.
but
that.
no other public hearing.
No other public hearing, so we can adopt it at a subsequent meeting, it doesn't have to be a public hearing.
That's
As long as it's enough to duly notice.
The code says finally approve the budget before September 15th.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion on the budget. Proposed budget.
I move that we table it until the next meeting.
Motion is to table the budget until the next meeting. Those in favor? Opposed? Please vote electronically.
This says include.
Now, question on
I'm putting it in this and getting the table, so you're actually going to table. Yes.
the motion to table.
Excuse.
The vote is a motion to table, not a motion to approve the budget.
Okay, but I am putting my yes onto the wrong question.
The question has been amended before.
Yeah, that's it.
Because then your person next month is all of them.
I was going to stand.
We voted for it. There we go.
No, I did not.
Can I amend the motion? The motion to table? When it comes back in August, what would be really beneficial, rather than this being a shotgun approach where we're each asking questions, is for there to be a summary or some detail. I'm presuming that this report has detail behind it somewhere in a spreadsheet or something that shows the line items that roll up into these progresses. So the detail would be beneficial, but we're not asking, we're looking, we're seeing each line item that rolls up into maintenance agreements.
Well,
When you do it like sub-account, this is an account, 5,000 and one's an account, you have a sub-account that provides more detail, that goes to that.
I mean, basically, it's gonna look like the financial
That's right. Yeah.
report, everything that goes into it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
All right, next item on the agenda is non-agenda public communications. I have several people signed up to speak. We will have 3 minutes. Last time I was on lax, let some people run over a little bit. In the interest of time, we're gonna cut it off for 3 minutes. I apologize in advance. Jessica will sign. If you would, raise your hand when they got 15 seconds left, so they know they're gonna wrap up. All All right, the first speaker I have is Fernando Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Fernando Rodriguez. Oh, a little loud. All right. Well, as you probably have seen me here before, and you say, well, this guy's back again. Well, guess what? Property taxes are excessively high. And that's why I'm back here. You know, one of my properties, and I'll say that again, it went from $75,000 to $246,000, an empty lot. There was just somebody literally dumping my property. So I was punished for that. And I really hope that you guys will do something about it. The next thing I want to ask is you guys need to put a limit on how much can a property be increased from one year to the next, because it's completely out of control. What you guys are doing with these here, you're just putting a lot of people on the streets. You know, Mike Marcel's here, he knows he gets a lot of people out there who really appreciate that. But we also represent a food bank, Johnson County Food Bank, and we're just getting more and more people every day because you guys put them out on the streets. And I would like for you guys to do something about it. Another thing that I would ask the board to take into consideration, next time you hire somebody, if they do not live in our county, you know, if you make an X amount, if you make over $80,000 a month, it's a must. You must live in our county. You know, you cannot have someone that's getting paid with my taxes, making over $100,000 is not even in my county. Then you're not protecting my interest. General Hospital, I say this very respectfully, they're very direct. You know, you being in this position for over 30 years in Johnson County, how can you tell me that you love Johnson County if you don't even live here? I've invested in this community, man. I love my community. And I'm tired of seeing homeowners losing their homes, business people losing their business. You know what's going to open more business downtown? But with excessive property taxes, man, you're really killing my dreams. You know, I always say the American dream is owning your home. But for so many people, you're making the American nightmare now. How are you going to pay your property taxes? We need to do something about it. And hopefully, very seriously ask again, you guys need to take into consideration, next time you hire somebody, over an X amount of money must live in our county. If not, it's like governor of Texas, not even in Texas, but governor from New Mexico, from Arizona. It doesn't work that way. How can you protect my interests if you don't live here? So I really ask for you guys to do something about that. And also, it must be a limit on property tax on how much you can increase from one year to the next. You know, another one is, I filed a protest. It took about over a year for them to come back to me. When they came back, they sent me a bill the 28th next month to be paid on the 1st, which was Monday.
I'm sorry you're out of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next speaker is Peter Smithson.
Don't start the clock yet,
Hurry, hurry.
Okay. All right. Let's make sure we're going. All right, ladies and gentlemen, directors, I appreciate you offering to serve our county. And this handout, I want you to look at. What I'm going to speak about now, it has to do with the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Texas, and the laws of the State of Texas. And you will find out from what I have to say that this CAD office is serious violation of the law of the United States, of Texas, and on and on. First thing I want to address is, you look at the top sheet, okay? Pay attention, go down to where it says A, B, C, D, because I'm going to address those issues with you tonight. Now let's talk about, if you want to turn the page, please, you're going to see a cap rate. Now, in old times, we were able to submit a cap rate. As I met with Mr. Hesfeld not too long ago, I was told that when I said you stop taking cap rates, he said that wasn't true. And if you could pause the clock, I'd like to call on a gentleman here who has signed up to speak and will attest to the fact that what I just said is true. Mr. Mike Petty, would you come forward, please?
Peter, will you finish your comments, then we'll let him speak.
Okay, thank you. Well, what Mr. Petty will do will say what was told me. You go into a CAD office and it's like a game in Las Vegas. It's always rigged to work against you. So as we went in, we could take a cap rate, you know I'm saying the truth here, and they would accept it. And then all of a sudden I walk in and they say, nope, we're not taking cap rates anymore. And Mr. Petty will attest to that. It's true, because he heard the same thing. And we heard tonight that Mr. Hesfeld can delegate to his people. So those people are as responsible once he delegates. And so all of a sudden this year, I put in a cap rate. Okay? Because my taxes had tripled. Tripled. That's why you see so many people here. We're in pain. 37% right now. Did you know the average of Texans are going to lose their home this year? 37%, and it will raise higher. Now, if you look at that cap rate, you're going to notice something interesting. And we don't have to go to both properties. This is my Sun Valley property. When I did the cap rate originally, it shows $74,000. Okay? Now above it, it says $66,935 maintenance. Well, all of a sudden, do you have a question?
No, you're about out of time.
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, when you evaluated it, what happened is you did a little magic in the CAD office. It went from 100% deduction to 15%. And if you look on your last page, you'll see I got them to send it. Now, where did it come out of the state law of Texas they could manipulate? Because you know why they manipulate? Because they don't see the numbers they want or like. Now,
Peter, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes are up.
can I sign again? This is really important. Can somebody else give me their 3 minutes?
You can't come back to the next meeting.
Well, that's not going to help the problems that we have here in Cleveland, Texas, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's talk offline about how you can approach this. We can't answer questions right now.
Well, when you don't have time to address the issues, it's kind of heartbreaking, because I brought some really serious stuff, and I guess we don't.
I understand that, I'm just saying this is not the place and time to do it.
Yes.
So we are constrained by the state.
Okay, can I conclude with my end comments?
You're done. Can we have your friend come up?
It's a slippery slope.
I've seen it done in other public meetings.
It can't be done. It can be done, and it's up to the board. But like I said, then you start losing control of your agenda. But it's up to y'all.
I would like to make a motion to give Mr. Commissioner 2 more minutes.
I have a motion here extending 2 minutes, and second. All in favor?
Aye.
You got 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to make it quick. So on these laws and regulation, number 2, ignoring taxation shall and equal and uniform. Were you aware, directors, that in this CAD office, I have a gentleman here that is taxed per square foot at $275 a foot. I have another gentleman at $60. I have another company taxed at $17.50. You get it? And it says by the law, it has to be fair and equal. Okay? It's not. Now my next point is, if I were to take this cap rate into a bank and borrow $200,000 within a month, I would have committed fraud. Okay? Now, next point. The values are not true and fair. Now, the chief appraiser has violated the Texas Constitution, which requires uniformity and equal taxation. In so doing, the chief appraiser signed an oath. You all signed an oath tonight, right? Violating of that oath is the third-degree felony. And as a reminder to every member of the CAD board, all of you have signed the same. I now make a motion that Mr. Hespeth be fired by just cause. Do I have a second? All in favor, would you raise your hand?
Time is up.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Good evening. This is the third time that I've addressed this board with a request that you consider transitioning from an annual property tax appraisal to once every 3 years, as is permitted by law. With all due respect to the report that we heard earlier this evening about your ability to openly communicate, I am disappointed that no one from this board has responded by a text or an email or a phone call or even acknowledged this request. I wonder why it hasn't been placed on the agenda of a future meeting. So, to me, that speaks of lack of communication or lack of transparency, or you just don't frankly care what your constituents are concerned about. And that also is disappointing to me. Now, I recognize that responding affirmatively to this request may impose some hardships on the budgets of the taxing entities. It'll step on some toes. I recognize that, and I'm sorry that such is the case, but the hardships are far greater on those property owners who are at risk of losing their property because they cannot afford the taxes that are arbitrarily increased and levied upon them every planning year. If I have to choose between the inconvenience imposed upon the taxing entities by having them tighten their belts versus the property owners who are just trying to survive, I think I would require the taxing entities to live within a reasonable budget before I would expect a property owner to suffer the difficulties of trying to come up with money for exorbitantly high property tax appraisals. I'm here to tell you this evening, there is a reckoning coming for a lot of people, a lot of smart, dedicated people, a lot of people who feel that they've been ignored and abused, people who are frankly frustrated and even angry, who are working diligently behind the scenes to support significant reform in the property tax system, especially here in Johnson County. And I promise you that that we're not going to stop until we see that significant progress on that front. This board needs to decide who you represent. Do you represent the taxing entities who never have enough of our money to satisfy their wants and desires, or do you represent the taxpayers whose properties are held hostage every year to this legalized shell game? There's just no in between. Thank you.
All right, so Doug Mercer again, Williston, Texas, there representing myself. Here, what I put before you, I've been studying the director manual a little bit, and some opportunities. So eliminate property taxes, I totally support that. But I think even being successful in the next legislative session, this could be 4 to 6 years before we get there. So what can we do in the meantime? My read of the director manual and the laws governing CAD, you guys can set policies. So we just heard an example. Appraise every 3 years. Perhaps you should write that into your policy manual. By the way, I went and looked at your policy manual. We selected off of the comptroller's site. It's 3 operating procedures. They're dense, not really expansive. Go to Bastrop County. I kind of like theirs. It read really easy. Even a layperson can understand. So anyway, a couple suggestions here is, one, I think the appraisal district should publish forms and examples of how to successfully appeal your valuation. Okay, it's a big black hole in the district. And hopefully there's some simple forms, some ways, some guidance. Let's put that out there. Let's help the people that need the help. Some of us don't know how to approach it. I've done enough of these over the years. I'm starting to figure it out. I don't guarantee I'm the best at it yet. Okay? Next is, if there's any discretion that you can give Mr. Chief Appraiser and your staff to taking the lowest possible value, please do so. If that needs to be a policy and you need some backup, great. Those are the main 2 I wanted to talk about. This appraisal plan was kind of new to me. I didn't come across that before. I think there's an opportunity in there to cement some of these ideas and perhaps some other things with where the property owner is valued first, their interests come first, not necessarily the taxing entity. So again, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I think there's some opportunity here. So please, as you go forward, use your policy-making authority as a board, provide guidance to staff on how to deal with property valuation. Thank you.
You do. Michael Petty.
Thank you. I'm a lifelong resident of Johnson County. I've been in the multifamily for over 40 years. I have good properties. I probably take really good care of my tenants. What Peter's talking about, what I'm talking about, is when you raise the taxes, double, triple, and they have done that on mine, it goes down to the lowest person that can afford it. And that's the people that are elderly, people who can't afford it. They're the ones that go to the street. And as I brought up last month, I said if you tax according to the cap rate, and what Peter's talking about, I've been there throughout the years, all due respect, I have been told 2 or 3 different things. One is you can't cap rate at all. I have. Number 2, I've been doing this for 40 years. Number 2, you can use the cap rate, but if the value is more than the cap rate, we don't give you the cap. In other words, the cap rate comes in and says, it's worth $100,000. But the value, we've sold other properties, these are multi-families, all we're talking about here, okay? Or we're talking about rental properties, both. Then you can't take the 150, you can take the 100,000. It's a fact, it's been year after many years. This isn't isolated. The number one thing we have to do is protect our citizens. When you have $17 a square foot versus Peter's 270, I mean, I can speak for mine, that's more than 100, 150, 17 versus 150, that's egregious. That's horrid, man. Absolutely. Where's it coming from? And the ones that are 17 and the ones that are low, they're out of town. They're out of town owners. They're not us here that really care about the people in Johnson County. We care. To us, $50, $100 may not be that much money, but to some people, that's the difference between eating. This is serious stuff. And I really care. We're not the ones that end up paying this. The tenants end up paying it, or they end up going to the street because we can't afford it. We still have a business to run. And I have kept my rents artificially low until finally it's going through the roof the last 2 years. And it's like, I can't do this. And then to find out that I'm at 150, even 175, go from one property, went from 180 to nearly 400 1 year. Yeah. It's like, wait, this is multifamily we're talking about. This is egregious, it's wrong, and it's got to be corrected. 17,200, 17,200. That's scary. That's scary. And again, out of town people who don't give a rat's the tooth about what we do here, or about the tenants, or anyone else here. We care. Peter cares. I care. Peter's done a lot of detailed work. He's very passionate about this, and he should be. He's done a lot of detailed can work. And Peter cares about his tenants, and that's what he's up there fighting. He's not fighting to line his own pocketbook. He's fighting for his tenants. And that's what I'm up here trying to say. And many of the people here are trying to say. It's egregious. It needs to be fair, fair, fair. It's really simple. Fair, fair, fair. Base it on the cap rate. Let you use the other deduction, 100% cap rate. And then, you know what? When you raise the rents, it's going to reflect in the cap rate, and you can open the values. To me, it's really, really simple. Thank you very much for your time.
Stephen Nutley?
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and discuss this with you, bring this to the attention of the review board and the appraisal district employees and the audience. My complaint is on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's called tax evasion, and that's done through illegal, non-permitted pit mine quarries here in Johnson County. It's a statewide epidemic on all Texas counties. And just recently, I did some Google Earth research, and there's 3 within 1 mile where I live. Where's Waldo? Anybody find him? They pop up all over the place. If you want a little tutoring, senior efforts, I'll tell you how to show you how to use Google Earth to find these things. But here's the point. These guys are maintaining agricultural tax exemption while operating a commercial pit mine quarry non-permitted without a mine ID or anything. Now, a concern that I have, one of these, Jim Husband, as you recall, I approached you in 2023 numerous times, went into your office, said, here it is, and it's located at the intersection of 705 and 805, where it lies off of our market 3048. And first time, you really didn't want to meet with me, but you did. But I got a little pushback, and then I came back, and my gate security camera caught an image of a huge rock crusher. I mean, we're talking 24 wheels on the semi and trailer. And I showed you that picture, and a huge excavator. And it went into the entry of this location. And you were telling me, well, I called them, they said it's a stop tank. Okay, no surprise. Then I went back again, and I said, well, look, I need to follow up on this. At that point, you had not. And I said, well, look, I have it vetted through a state agency that spoke with a local major excavation company, and they openly admitted that, yes, this is a commercial pit mine quarry. And, oh, well, here's the application. Okay, they filled out the application. But anyway, long story short, it finally got shut down in 2023. I don't know if you ever made that visit that I asked you to or not, but here's my question. That was commercial. Those were commercial deliveries, operating as a commercial pit mine illegally. I would request that you and the board here see to it that rollback taxes are exacted, and here's the remedy. The remedy to make the rest of us whole is to take those proceeds and subdivide that among the thousands of property owners and credit us back that money that we propped up. You see the point? Okay.
these are the new houses that were picked up, December 24, as you can see over the years. About 2,005 new houses throughout the county. Different entities.
Jim, excuse me.
Yes.
If you would please take your conversations out in the hallway.
That includes the people by the door.
Please. Take your conversations out in the hallway, please.
Try to make this as quick as possible.
Thank you.
The next, these are the, five of the big flats that we had in 24, in the different places we have. As you can see, Johnson County is growing for sure.
So, previous ownership talks about new houses, is that,
Those are new lots right there.
are they certificates of occupancy, or are they lots that are created?
They're lots of plats.
These plats.
Maintenance apartments.
This one I understand is plots, but the one before this is the table.
Oh, the new houses, those are houses that we picked up over the years. The
Okay,
comparisons
so
are-
they're occupied. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
they could be vacant, we could ask a realtor, they're out there. The inventory could be up and down. But that's what's been going on in Johnson County for a while. Let's go to Eagle View. This is,
Can I ask a question before we go on the houses? It shows, 2023, we had 2,920 houses. Those are new houses, right? Do we know what the average occupancy is of the houses? Is it 2 people, 3 people, 4 people? So from a population standpoint, we know the impact, or?
you go by the records of the census, they'll say 2.2, 3.5 if you have children, 2 adults.
The average
Yeah, 2.3 is.
2.3, okay.
Yes. Some have more, some have less. Then we go to the next slide, and I know this is overview, so everybody can, this is what we have, in our budget for, which is pictometry. Eagle View flies it for us, and the thing about this, we pay for it in our budget, but the entities get to use it. So we don't have to go pay for it also. The police department, schools, all of those use it.
So is it by seat license or is it from,
No, it's open individually.
Are you asking if, we don't pay by the use, so we can set up as many users as.
Yeah, so the entities use it, the next slide is our homesteads. We have about 47,000, homesteads over 65, that get applied for. Then we have our disabilities like, the disabled. We have 100% disabled veterans. We got 1,441 of those in our county that we know about. That apply, can you see that?
Yeah, now we got.
It was on the wrong side.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is, you can't see, you can't see.
You're going too fast, Frank.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're on the right one now.
We have 443 deferrals.
what is that?
Okay, deferrals are over 65 or disabled people. If you're over 65, you can defer paying your taxes.
But they get paid by your heirs.
Yes.
Yes. So they accumulate, but the interest rate on it is not as expensive as if they didn't do it. And if you have a mortgage, let's say you're over 65 or disabled, you have a mortgage, your mortgage company's probably gonna pay them because they're not gonna let you not pay your taxes. Most people, what they do when they become 65 is defer but pay their taxes. But if something happened and they were in a hospital, they're not gonna get hit with the 7% and all that. It's fine.
Yeah, it drops from 1% per month interest down to 5% per annum.
For the whole year, so, that's
With no penalties.
with no penalties on there. So that helps. You gotta do it, but you know, you need to let your heirs know it, because it's like 181 days, right?
Yes.
After they pass or move out of it to pay the taxes. So it's a good thing, but you wanna be, I would educate the people, be careful with it.
So if they don't pay the taxes in 180 days, it goes to the courthouse check?
No,
They become subject to suit.
they become subject to a lawsuit.
Oh,
We're not in the mood to, as far as I know, the collector's not in the mood to take property back. We don't want it.
If it's an over 65 homestead, and I find out about it, it's not being filed.
No, yeah, that's right. So, our protest, if you, that's our protest. And the protest, this year, we had about 16,514 protests. Over the last couple of years, we've had 22,000, 23. This year they had a circuit breaker, like the homestead exemption. If you have a homestead, your market value can go up on your property, but your taxable, unless you had something new, you know, can go up 10%. The taxable part down at the bottom, not the market. The market can go up, but down here. So this year.
Educate on that.
Okay.
Educate the public on that.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Okay. We're trying to get more out there.
I'm just saying.
Okay, I know.
I'm sorry, but this is not
Oh, I'm
audience
sorry.
participation.
I answered your question, but we're working on putting more information out there. The circuit breaker, I think helped, you know, we've heard a lot on the rent houses and stuff like that, and when they went up, and I know some other stuff, but the ones that were low and they went up, if it goes over 20%, the property was under $5 million in '24, they could get a 20% circuit breaker. There's been discussion, that's a 3-year circuit breaker right now. 24, 25, 26, if the state meets in January, they can extend that. They can change what it is. The state could also change the homestead cap loss to 5%, they could change it to 1%. Whatever they do, we have to do that. If they change the system, which they can, that's when you want to talk to your legislature and the new one that was just elected. Talk to them and say, hey, I want this, and get them to change the law. So this is part of my report. Then we can do what they say. I mean, they control it. Their legislature controls how things are gonna be on certain things. So the change, you know, people wanna get rid of property tax. To do that, you're gonna have to go to the state of Texas and get them to say, we're not gonna have no property tax, we're gonna do it a different way. They have to do that. So, that's what that is, that's a little thing, but we'll do more on our website. We're trying to get more and more out there. Amy, you have anything to report on your regular? We're in the process of certifying The appraisal road to the entities, next week. It's required by law that we certify by the 25th. So, that process the next 3 or 4 days, so it's, got a lot to do in a short period of time, get all the values in, the ARB changed. Then, the lawsuits, we've had lawsuits, we'll get more lawsuits. It's the nature of the beast. And the county, Johnson County used to be a small county that turned into, like our attorneys have told us, Chris Jackson, that represents us on those. You have been found out in Johnson County, and the attorneys and stuff will come down and sue more. So our budget for attorney fees will go up. So that's what will happen during that time.
Jim, question on that, our lawsuits, is that something that we should go into executive session occasionally?
Occasionally, we will. Yeah, if we're going to get into individual lawsuits.
Right, but I'm just saying, we've been coming since, well, we're in June now, so I've been coming since January, but I don't know any specifics on the lawsuits, and I don't know when that point comes that you might.
Most time, if they go to court on one, we would go in and talk about it and say it's gonna cost, go see you and say, this is gonna happen. If I can settle it within reason, I've been able to settle them, but we can go and talk more specifics about lawsuits. Can't talk about them right here, but we can do that. We set that up before we talk about the lawsuit.
In an executive session.
Yeah. So we'll, do that. The other thing that, the chairman asked, this is our, the organization chart.
I requested that they show an org chart, explain the structure, the roles and responsibilities, so that I can get a better handle, the board can get a better handle on what the organization looks like and how it operates.
And this is ever changing, never forgetting, never forgetting that taxpayers are there, okay? I've been around a long time. I don't forget the taxpayers. I won't even go into that session. I know the taxpayers are there. I know the taxing entities are there. This is what happens from that point. We have a board of directors. They have one employee. That's me. The appraisal review board will now be put on by the board of directors. The applications will go through the TLO. It's labeled to apply. Y'all can give them an application. Y'all will handle that. I have nothing to do with anybody on that ARB. Then the taxpayer liaison officer is under y'all. So you really have three things there. Okay? After that, I have an administrative director, which is Jessica. She has an assistant that works on things. And then we have our bookkeeper. It's on this side over here.
That's an APA?
Yes.
So that's accounts payable?
Yes.
Okay.
Appraisal operation director, an appraisal operation assistant director, and then the appraisal staff.
Who's the appraisal operations director?
Janice Lee. We put the names on things, but this I just gave an overview.
Okay.
Brittany is the appraisal operation assistant director, and then we have our appraisal staff.
How many appraisal staff are there?
Count them all, there's But I'll get all that information for you.
I just want to say,
Okay. Our customer service deeds and GIS is same deal. If you have a mapping problem, a deed problem, computer problem, any problem, we send it to there. Yes, we have a coordinator that helps her, and then we have those 3, 4, trying to get a full-time, another one, to do all of that. Draw the maps, do all that for us. They do a very good job. Our data operations director is also has the ARB coordinator, because you have the ARB, but the individuals that get all the work done is our staff. We pay that staff. Then she has a coordinator in data entry that looks over 3 people to get all the data in that the appraisers send to us. And then the ARB coordinator has a staff, 5 or 6 people to run those 2 ARB panels. So that's basically the way we do things in office.
The first question that comes to mind is, we have responsibility to direct the appraisal review board. I don't even know who they are.
I looked it up online. They're on our website. They're on the website.
Well, what I'm trying to get is I'd like to meet
Yeah.
and see who they are, and because I get a feeling we're gonna be doing some evaluating, and at least I'd like to know the people that
The meeting is just fine. The problem that you run into, do I still need to raise my voice? The problem that you run into when you have discussions between the board and ARB members is that any of them, you need to keep the discussions. Yeah, you need to keep the discussions to general topics and not value.
Yeah.
That is just fine. But when you start mentioning value, if anybody feels like they're being pressured one way or the other, that could be a concern. But yes, there's no problem with you meeting them. You will be talking with the TLO and looking at applications. You may even want to talk to people just to see them and get some feel of how they are. But again, those discussions need to be very
But we're gonna have to
clear.
do annual performance for.
Yes, based on information that is given to you by the TLO. Yes,
We gotta
you'll be doing some stuff.
raise their
Yeah.
performance.
So we get a third down report.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because you will be the ones, yeah, but you will be the ones ultimately responsible for
Yeah, I get that.
For doing that.
To me.
Plus, this year we have a database that's been set up that shows how each ARB member voted in each one of the hearings. And you'll have that available as well.
But we have no context specifically on what happened in the meeting because we're not allowed to know. That's a double blind.
It can't work that way. We can't just go through the TLO.
Right.
If I'm gonna do somebody's performance review, I've gotta talk to them and see how I think they're doing.
Yeah.
Again, you need to be careful about what you say about values.
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, we
Okay.
can't, I mean, we can get an overview of the data, and I.
You'll have an overview of the data.
we have to tread very carefully because our friends in Austin set these laws up.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I don't want to cross those guys.
No, that's all I can do.
And anybody can sit in on any hearing, public or y'all, and watch it, without saying a word.
You said
He is
there's more.
correct.
You can sit in on
Yes,
it.
yes. And if I seem too hesitant, keep in mind that part of my job is to keep y'all out of trouble.
Yeah, thank you.
They said we could sit in on an ARB hearing. We can't say anything, we can't communicate, body language or anything else. We just listen.
What is this, China?
The reason why Jim doesn't go into those ARB hearings and he has staff go in there is he doesn't want the ARB also to feel pressure in one way or another. So he just has a staff member in there to present the appraisal. Yeah, we could probably work with Changer and work something out that would be satisfactory.
But the reason the ARB, the appraisal review board is under y'all, it's not like you're gonna rule over them, it's that you appoint them.
Yeah.
So that's why I put it on there.
Yeah, so we evaluate it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, he wanted to drop it off the line, and we put it there because, y'all uphold them.
Yeah, I was making a point.
Yes. But that's all I have, gentlemen, and ladies.
Move to adjourn?
No. We still have
Investment assets.
He said it was over.
That is just our quarterly, investment policy that we have to put out.
So I got a question in the, and I know we talked about banking earlier and the fees. All of the 2.5, 2.6 million is held in a bank. And Texas law would allow us to invest it like in a pool, which is earning like 5.3%.
Yes, we are looking at that, the auditor is also looking at with me because he, that it's in our investment policy that we can't invest in.
Rather than having all of that money sitting, I think we end up with a great bank that's not paying off.
Yes.
They're super safe, give your money out easily.
We are looking into that also.
All they pay back investing by laws.
What do we need to report on that?
I'll get it to you next month. If I can, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
We're working on everything that y'all asked us about.
So do we have to make a motion to
Yes, you will, when we get ready to do it, yes. Y'all will have we'll bring it to you. To the board.
Because there are different pools you can.
Yes,
choose
there
from.
are.
As part of that, which ones that you consider, when I looked, they look like they're all paying about the same, but, they can just be really beneficial to all. I mean, like 3% on my money, but virtually no risk I do.
And then we go to our investment policy in schools, every 2 years we have to go.
Yeah.
The guy that does that, he knows, he's real good about knowing which investment pool you want in, and which one you might not want.
Right, exactly.
So we've got some experts out there that can help us.
Look at what else is in that pool. Okay.
So we'll bring that to you all.